Last week we heard a parable about soils. Jesus continues his use of agricultural settings for his next parable found in the Gospel of Matthew. This week, a parable about seeds and what we grow from seeds.
The scripture is found from Matthew 13, verses 24 through 30 and 36 through 43. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slave said to him, "Then do you want us to go and gather them?" But he replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of evil and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let everyone with ears listen. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Oh, weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew, Matthew, Matthew. Throw him into the furnace at the end of time. Matthew, 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 Matthew. You don't scare me. But boy, he likes to write that way. I know there is at least one, my beloved Elizabeth. Do we have any other gardeners in the house? A few, maybe? Well, I think you'll get the metaphors in this sermon. Are there gardeners passionate about the beds of daylilies? I am. Coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, beds of herbs, basil, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Any lawn perfectionists, those who must have that perfect carpet of uniform green, mown just so to a perfect height. Well, to you, let me say just one word: thistle. In particular, Canada thistle. It's officially on the list of Indiana noxious weeds, according to Indiana Code 15-16-7-2. Yes, I learned something this week. That Indiana Code mandates that landowners take necessary steps to control and contain the spread of this highly invasive species. Canada not only sends smoke from its wildfires across our borders, but it sends us shoots of rhizomes, those horizontal underground stems which can grow several feet and put out new shoots themselves. The Purdue Landscape Report notes, to add insult to injury, if a rhizome is cut or tilled, a separate plant will grow from each piece of rhizome. The Indiana Department of Natural Resources puts thistle on a list that sounds like it's from science fiction. Terrestrial invasive species. Smoke by air, weed by ground, our neighbors to the north are not being very neighborly. I wonder what weeds we send their way. What if I shared a gardening tip that is found in Scripture, uttered by the very mouth of Jesus himself to help us? Let the thistle grow. Yes, let the thistle grow. How might our gardens look in a month or two? How might the lawn look next year? One word, plural this time, thistles. To the thistle list, I could add common chickweed, crabgrass, dandelions, ground ivy, creeping Charlie, leafy spurge, nutsedge, poison ivy, quackgrass, white clover, wild violet, and more. Let them grow, says Jesus. Let them all grow. After all, Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "A weed is a plant whose virtues have yet to be discovered." A pastor friend of mine, shared a story about growing up here in the Midwest when, about midsummer this time, they were sent as children into the oat fields to hoe out all the thistles. He remembered his neighbors doing something a little bit differently. They would wait until the seed pod appeared on the thistle, pluck it, place it in a burlap bag, and then burn the bag along with the collected pods. I suppose these neighbors were taking a more biblical approach to thistle eradication. Perhaps my friend became a pastor so as to make amends for not following Jesus' advice for weed control. The parable of the weeds, also known as the parable of the wheat and the chaff, or the parable of the wheat and the tares. This parable is a hard parable, not only for gardeners and farmers, but also for any hearer with ears to hear. And that is the point. In our Bible study group, we've begun a study of Jesus' parables using a book by Amy Jill Levine. Levine writes, "If we leave the parable with the same thinking that which we entered the parable, then the parable has not done its work for us. So let's enter this parable." Sure, we could be satisfied with the allegorical interpretation of the parable that Jesus offers his disciples in private. The sower is the Son of Man, whoever that may be, each of us perhaps. The field is the word, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, the weeds are the children of the evil one, the enemy is the devil, the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. But then, as one scholar notes about any sort of explanation of parables, the word explain is an interesting one. From the Latin, it literally means to flatten. In this case, to explain means to take a three-dimensional parable and iron it out so that it becomes two-dimensional and simple. When we do this, things become distorted. Once the parable is explained, it becomes less useful to us. Ironing things out may make those things look better, more acceptable in the eyes of polite and discriminating society, but something is lost in a simple allegorical interpretation. There must be something more going on here than meets the ear. A parable isn't a parable without some surprises. Notice that it is the master who sows and not the slaves. Isn't that curious? In this parable? Notice that the master knows that the seed is good, and and that an enemy was the sower of the seeds. Notice that the sowing of the weeds happens while everybody was asleep. Isn't that an interesting detail that Jesus gives? And of course, we notice and are disturbed by the master allowing the seed and the weed to grow together. What are we dealing with here? Well, literally, we are dealing with the weed known as bearded darnel, which is a Middle Eastern weed. Talitha Arnold writes, the bearded darnel is a devil of a weed. It is particularly troublesome, a thistle of a problem for wheat growers. Why? Well, it looks exactly like wheat. And the roots of the bearded darnel grow and entwine themselves around the roots of the wheat plants. So you can't pull out the bearded darnel without pulling the wheat plant out of the ground as well. How's that for a weed? It's best to wait until harvest time, when the bearded darnel begins to fall over while the wheat is standing straight up, and then you know, let's pull the bearded darnel now, and then the wheat comes out and you separate them. Maybe this is how we can make sense of the parable of the weeds. In addition to allegorizing the parable, we can turn the elements of the parable into metaphors for our lives. What might the parable say about the church? What does a sleeping church look like? What happens when a church sleeps? Well, one indication is the pastor starts preaching. Somebody's awake. One day we wake up and say to ourselves, where in the world did they come from? But then who is they? They are now a part of us. And no doubt they have become a part of our church, such that we and they can no longer be distinguished one from another. If only it were as simple as this person is wheat, this person is a weed. And then, metaphorically speaking, yank them out and burn them? Oh my. This is tough stuff. Jesus, where are you going? My New Testament seminary professor makes an interesting observation regarding the sower of the weeds. Holly Heron writes, in the parable, the one who sows the weeds among the wheat is called an enemy. We encounter enemies at other times in the Gospel of Matthew. The first time is where we are told to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Well, this should give us pause. If these enemies are destined for a furnace of fire, why should we love them in the here and now? Further, God, the one who judges all of us, causes the sun to rise on both the evil and the good without distinction. What are we to make of this paradox? The same interpretation can also apply to our communities. Unfortunately, in our communities, there are many self-made weed pullers who have first sown the definitions of what a so-called weed is. Does their proclamation necessarily make another human being a weed just because they say so? What about the notion that we are all somehow and in some way made in the image of God? Who is the weeds and who is the weeds that you see when you look out in your life? What is your criteria? The scholar Debbie Thomas writes, in other words, there's no way we can police the wheat field without damaging the wheat. There is no way we can rid ourselves of everything bad without distorting everything good. When we rush ahead of God and start yanking weeds left and right, we do terrible harm to ourselves and to our field. Our sincerity devolves into arrogance. Our love devolves into judgment. Our holiness devolves into hypocrisy, and the field suffers. Everyone suffers. And what if we apply this way of thinking about the parable of the weeds to our very own lives, to our own selves? Where do the thistles and the weeds inside us come from, and what do we do about them? Does our own weediness come more from the things which we have done, or more from the things which we have left undone? What do we make about Jesus' words? Judge not, that ye be not judged. Oh, this is a devilish parable. The enemy must have come and sown this one amongst us. But it's Jesus who gave us this parable. It's like a thistle in our midst, pricking us. What do we take from it? Well, perhaps, as one preacher writes, the parable frees us from the burden of having to play God. That's one thing that we can certainly take from this parable. Another thing is we don't have to set things right all by ourselves. God is somehow working in our midst. Perhaps. And in my mind, the world still needs the prophetic voice to be raised and to say, this is not right. You still need to call out the weeds in some sort of fashion. But how? Justice must prevail. The weak must be lifted up. The lost found. Somehow, some way. Well, let me look to one of my favorite plants that's growing right now along roadsides. Chicory. Anybody else like chicory? They're one of my favorite plants, often called a roadside weed. I love its blossoms this time of year, of periwinkle blue flowering and flourishing on pavements, gravel, along streets, sidewalks. It is one hardy weed. Pull it out, get rid of it, burn it. Not for me to do. Amen.